beautiful souls. I hope you're well. Today, we're meeting in a hobbit house, in a hobbit hole, where we are going to discuss a topic that was inspired to me today by the Mela Collective, which, as always, is my soul cluster. And I'm not sure why they invited me to talk about this topic, since I'm definitely not a specialist of health issues or dietary practices or anything like that. I'm not a nutritionist, so take everything I share with you today with a grain of salt. But the root of the sharing of today is a notion of harmonization with our bodies, because we have to remember that we're not just souls, we're also beautiful bodies incarnated on Terra, and that we're here to also experience this wonderful aspect of being alive and incarnated in a Terran body, which has to do with food. Personally, I love eating. I'm a big, not that I'm a big eater, but I love eating. I really enjoy it. It's a real pleasure for me. However, you will probably have noticed that we've been living in a world that's been corrupted and mostly polluted in so many ways that it has become very difficult for people who want to have a healthy and balanced diet to, just be able to eat without having to poison themselves or to and just it becomes such a headache to be able to find healthy foods. And so I wanted to talk about this today a little bit, just to share, not so much to teach or to preach or whatever, because I really think that diet is something that's very personal to each person, to each body type, to each individual. And so I don't believe in these general big rules that everybody should be, I'm sorry, vegan or vegetarian or whatever. I think it's really about the needs of everyone, but also the place in which we are at the present time in our spiritual evolution or physical needs and things like that. So I think it's really something that there's not like a general rule for everyone. But I'd like to share here trigger certain reflections about foods and the way food is presently on our planet Terra, but also maybe share a little bit of my own personal experiences and see if that can be of help to anyone. So I don't think I'm going to bring super new things here today, but I think it's just more a reminder for certain people because I've noticed that often my messages, especially the ones that are inspired by the Mela Collective, always come coincidentally for people at a time when they kind of needed to hear something. I don't know. Sometimes not all of them, just a few people. So I'm just bringing that here, and you do whatever, if it's good for you, you take it. You take what's good for you, and if it doesn't resonate with you, there's no problem. You can just move on to another channel or another video. So one thing's for sure is that our food has been poisoned, and it was it was done with intent by the deep state, because the whole purpose was to depopulate 90% of the population, as Agenda 2021-2050 clearly stated it. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, well, it's time to do your research. And because of that, so we've been definitely poisoned in our foods, not only with very with chemical products, with things that are facilitate the development of cancers and things like that. So sugar, for example, is an immense poison. Refined sugar is an immense poison. And then comes this whole notion of organic foods. And organic foods, obviously, is, the intent of it would be wonderful if, meaning that we don't have any pesticides in the soil of the foods that we're consuming. That's generally the basis of organic foods. The problem is that it doesn't take into consideration the fact that our skies are being poisoned by chemtrails and have been so for so many years. So, I mean, it's better to have a fruit or vegetable that, doesn't have at least the soil poisoned by pesticides. But in any case, it is being chemtrailed all over and all the time. So it's not that we should just ignore, organic foods as, oh, well, it's chemtrailed anyway. So, let's eat some really crappy foods with a lot of pesticides in it. No, of course, organic is just a little bit better. But to think that eating organic foods is just going to prevent you from any type of poisoning, unfortunately, is not the case because of the chemtrails. So something you can reflect upon is perhaps foods that are grown organically, but that perhaps, for example, in greenhouses, that could be an option as well. So this way, hopefully, the air is a little, well, the air is still kind of poisoned anyway, but I mean, it's not directly, so that can be an opportunity. For example, I will give you an example of spinach, for example. Spinach is a very difficult thing to keep organic because it's very sensitive. So you can have organic spinach, but then if it's grown in greenhouses where there's not like 100 million planes with chemtrails, spraying stuff on it every day, that can be kind of a good way to eat spinach, for example. So just an example. So that's the reflection that one should keep in mind regarding organic foods. And then there's all the fake, the greenwashing or the fake stuff, like things like to be aware of, like natural aroma or natural flavor. This compound or whatever word doesn't mean anything, and that doesn't mean that the natural flavor or thing itself is healthy. So again, you're invited to do your own research about that. Obviously, refined sugar is a complete poison. Another problem is gluten. There's a myth about gluten that it's the actual gluten itself to which we we don't tolerate for those who are a little bit intolerant. I'm not talking about celiac. I'm talking about intolerant. And in fact, the problem with gluten is that it's not gluten itself, because I mean, humans have been eating gluten for thousands and thousands of years, and there's never been such a big problem with gluten before. The problem with gluten is the fact that wheat, which is largely processed in this kind of monoculture, kind of way of doing things, where it's extremely protected by a lot of pesticides. And it's actually those pesticides to which we are intolerant when we are gluten intolerant. So it's important to make a difference here. It's not the gluten itself to which we can be intolerant. It's the actual pesticides that are really, really present in the wheat that's mass produced. So another myth here that one has to be aware of. Then what else? So I mean, those are kind of the basics. Obviously, there's vegetarianism, with this whole question of how animals are treated and how there's a lot of violence in which the animals are treated. And so on an energetical point of view, obviously, we are invited to reflect on if we want to encourage a production of foods that's based on a form of violence. Again, I'm not preaching anything. I'm just sending some reflections, because, some people, for example, have certain metabolisms or certain health situation which requires them, or at least for a period or for forever, depending on the consumption of certain animal proteins, such as meat, and not all. I mean, some meats are produced in a way that is a little bit more benevolent towards the animal, and also it does not contain any, products, or trying to find a penicillin and things like that that the animals are fed with normally in big production. So again, a free range animal that's not grown, but that's growing, or that's living in the context of a farm where it's kind of benevolent and loving, then maybe it's a little bit of a different approach than mass-produced kind of meat. So those are things that we have to be aware of. That doesn't mean that we need to be super what's the word, dogmatic about it. So I will give my example, just to share my own experiences to see how I deal with all this. Personally, for some time now, I've completely let go of any processed sugar. So the only type of sugar that I will eat will be either honey, or organic maple syrup, or eventually fruits like dates or figs, which are very sweet, things like that. I also try to keep away from oils that are, processed in a way that can be of hurt to certain animals, like palm oil, for example, or that are very tend to contribute to development of cancer. So I try to stay closer to, organic coconut oil, for example, when I cook, or some, olive oil that's cold pressed, and that's organic, ideally, things like that. I'm not a big fan of fruits in general. I don't eat a lot of fruits. So I tend to go towards more like vegetables, but I'm not a huge fan also of green vegetables. That doesn't, obviously they're very good for the health, but it's not my favorite thing in the world. So I tend to go towards vegetables that are more like earthbound. I love, for example, squash and pumpkins. So butternut squash, for example, with a nice coconut milk, organic, will make a very nice soup with lots of curcumin, ginger, curry, smoked paprika, which are very anti inflammatory and good for the health as well. So that's something I eat every day, a bowl of soup, and of that nature, with a little bit of garlic as well, and salt and pepper. Or also what I really like is to go, since I'm a little bit intolerant to gluten, because of, as I've said, because of the stuff that they put in the wheat, the pesticides. I use a lot of buckwheat, and that is something I do, buckwheat pancakes or crepes, which is very, very nice to eat with salty, with some mushrooms and organic grown spinach. Or sometimes I will eat it sweet as well, with a little bit of honey. So that's a nice meal. Or I will have some quinoa instead of rice, which rice, I've heard, I don't know what, that there can be a little bit of arsenic in related to the rice. So I don't eat a lot of rice, a little bit, but sometimes, just to have a little bit of variety in my diet, because it is often said that having a variety in your diet is also important for your body to take all that it needs, and also have a pleasant way of eating. So yeah, I will have some quinoa with some vegetables. I love mushrooms, and so that's something I eat a lot. But it can be zucchinis, or things like that. And yeah, so it's just, I'm just giving you some examples here. When you go to the restaurant, for example, for a lot of people who are gluten intolerant and that don't eat sugar, that don't eat gluten, that don't eat dairy products or things like that, it can be really, really complicated. So for example, when I go to restaurants, something I like to focus is like Mexican food, for example, because what I like about Mexican food is that they use beans, they use a lot of squash, and a lot of maize, And the thing with maize is, again, it needs to be kind of organic because, if it's mass produced, there's going to be, again, a lot of pesticides in it. So, but mostly the problem with maize is that it can be genetically modified. So again, ideally having organic maize is a way to keep away from genetically modified products, including maize. So that's something that's good. I enjoy, for example, a nice Mexican brunch with frijoles, with some eggs, and I will talk about dairy products and animal proteins in just a second, with eggs and some vegetables and fruits, some tortillas with maize, a little bit of sour cream or something, and a little bit of goat cheese, or something like that. So that can be a nice alternative to restaurants where you'll be always served some gluten or some sugar or things like that. Regarding animal proteins such as eggs and dairies, I'm an example of people who I don't eat meat. I haven't been eating meat for some years now. I've been a vegetarian for a while because I don't need meat, and I obviously, for reasons of ethics, I'm not crazy about the way animals are treated. But one thing I have trouble not eating is other animal proteins such as eggs, which I could stay without, but often it's a nice complementary thing to meals. But one thing I have trouble keeping away from is cheese and yogurts and things like that I love. It's something I really love. So I found some compromises there. I do eat eggs sometimes, and just once a week in my weekly brunch with Mexican food. And I try to have these eggs, free range, organically fed chickens. So that, kind of diminishes the harm on the animals. And the other thing regarding dairies, for example, cheese, I stopped eating cow milk cheese. So now I only go for goat cheese or sheep milk cheese, which is absolutely delicious in the form of feta cheese. And I use that a lot to accompany, again, my Mexican kind of food, or also put it in my buckwheat crepes with a little bit of spinach and mushrooms. It's really, really good. And so that's kind of a way for me to have a little bit of that animal protein that I often need in complement to my legumes, such as black beans, red beans, chickpeas, which are lentils and things like that I also use in my daily diet. And so having a little bit of that animal protein helps me because of my blood type. I am kind of in that need of that. That doesn't mean it's something I want to cultivate and do for the rest of my life. I would love to be able to be animal protein free forever, but I'm not at a place where I'm capable of being a complete vegan now. I've tried, but it's not for me yet, but maybe in time. So I just gave you some examples. Personally, I don't drink any alcohol anymore. Sometimes I might have one glass of, white wine because I don't care for red wine, and I don't drink beer because of the gluten. But that's something, but pretty rare in some occasions. But usually I will drink a lot of either warm herbal teas, which is, pleasant. I love tulsi, which is very, very good and has many benevolent properties, but also I love balsam fir leaves, which has this nice wintry kind of taste to it. I also love, obviously, chamomile, mint, but there's something else that I drink on an everyday basis, at least 2 or 3 liters per day, and that's cold brewed herbal tea that's made of and now I can't remember the name. It's I can't remember the name in English. There's tulsi, there's give me a second. Yeah, it's milky stage oats, and the other one is ortie. I'm trying to find the word in English. Ortie, I think, is I will have to find the word. I can't find it right now. And I just brew that in one of those tea balls in my water bottle, and I let it sink all night. So it during 8 hours or so, it has the time to actually brew, and there's a lot of minerals and good elements in those herbs. So that really brings a lot to my drink, and it tastes good. Also, it gives this gentle herb like taste to my water rather than just pure flat water, which sometimes I find a little bit boring. As for water filtration as well, personally, I use a Berkey filter, which has been of great help because it filters about 99.9% of all the crap that's in our tap water, which I encourage you not to drink. Also, the waters from the waters that you buy in stores, from I can't find a word, source water, like from streams. The problem with that is that it's bottled into plastic bottles, and so the plastic actually leaches. So it's not really wonderful to drink that either. So I use a Berkey, which is kind of an investment, but it's a nice way to keep most of the crap away. And I also use in each of my water bottles um, a charcoal piece of charcoal, which also takes away a lot of the things that could be left in terms of heavy metals and things like that. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it really helps. And so this is kind of how I feed. Basically, I use also chia and flax seeds and hemp seeds in my soups, or I put that a little bit of that on my meals also because it's full of good proteins and beautiful elements. Chia seeds also, and yeah, so that's lemon. I use a lot of lemon. In the morning, for example, I always use a little bit of half a lemon in my water to just help detoxify the body. And one last thing I wanted to talk about is this notion of intermittent fasting. It's not something that one has to do, but it's always excellent for the body to do a little bit of fasting. It can be a whole day, or for some people who want to try a longer fasting. But personally, I've come to appreciate intermittent fasting, which includes eating for a period of 5 to 6 hours, and then after that, the rest of the time, I don't eat. So it includes the rest of my evening, the whole night. I don't eat in the morning. And sometimes I will have something light to eat in the evening and something more sturdy, more filling in at lunch. And but I've alternated. There's been some periods where I would just eat one big meal a day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that would be my only meal. So it depends if I'm very active physically. If I'm active physically, I will tend to have kind of 2 meals. And if I'm not active physically and I'm just working at the computer, I will have just one meal. So that's also very good because it gives a break to the body to detoxify and, not only keep a good weight, but also to detoxify any kind of, things that your body needs to deal with, because we're constantly bombarded by this, through the chemtrails, through what we eat, to what we drink, if we're not careful, by these pesticides, by these really heavy metals, by these things that are bad for us. So this is just a very short overview of the different elements that I wanted to touch upon regarding diet. But diet should also be diverse and fun and pleasant with foods that you love. It's not just about being healthy at the price of not enjoying what you eat. Enjoying what you eat is important because it gives a message to the body that eating is good, and that your body really digests and really treats this food much better if it comes not in guilt, if it doesn't come in or dogma, and it's appreciated and loved and cherished. So that's it for today. Just wanted to share this kind of capsule of or reflection about foods and diet. I don't know why the Miller Collective wished for me to touch upon that topic, but maybe it's a nice way to contribute to harmonizing your way of living, your life, and I'm here to participate in, very humbly, in bringing some elements of harmony in our lives, including for my own life. So here is what I shared with you today. Have a lovely day, take immense care of yourself, and be always in consciousness and mindfulness about what you eat, Oh, last thing I wanted to say, sorry about that, I forgot about that. Really important element is that now I try to keep away from any foods that come in boxes, first of all. But even if they do come in a bag or a box, for example, my buckwheat, flour does come in a bag. But the purpose is to really make sure that what you have is really the essence of the food itself. For example, buckwheat flour is buckwheat flour. There's nothing else there. There's no sugar. There's not supposed to be any sugar. There's not supposed to be any other kind of thing than buckwheat flour. If you have, coconut water, go for coconut water that's filled with really amazing um, minerals and things, but that you have only 100% coconut water, not made from concentrate, not with added sugar, not with guar, gum or something in it, just plain 100%, coconut water. And, like that for every single thing you buy. If it's not the actual, fruit or vegetable itself, make sure that if it comes in a box or a bag, that, it's really the ingredient itself and only, and there's not a bunch of other elements that you don't even know what they're like or what it is, or the name is so unpronounceable that you don't even know what it is, or because it can often hide some really nasty stuff under really nice greenwashing names such as natural flavors, so be careful of that. Just go for the raw ingredients, and you will always be safer because you will cook with raw ingredients. You will know exactly what's in that bag or in that box or what that ingredient is. So just wanted to add that. Have a lovely day. Take immense care of yourself. Much love. Bye. All my gratitude for helping this channel bring high vibrations and high frequencies to more people.